The White House finally dropped the crypto report we've all been waiting for, which was obviously going to tell us exactly how much Bitcoin the United States government owns. And oops, they forgot to include that part. Yet we did get reassurances from Bo Hines that the strategic Bitcoin reserve is coming. Meanwhile, on Wall Street, Ethereum ETFs are absolutely ripping, making a record 19 days straight of inflows. And when we want to talk about ETFs, we bring in the master, Eric Balchunas, to do so. We've got Yago and Eric ready to go. Come on.
Let's go.
A lot going on in the markets and in the news. Going to go ahead and bring on Eric and Yago now. Eric, this whole Ethereum thing, it might be catching on. Ethereum ETFs match record 19-day inflow streak. We got an ad. Awesome. Thanks. And of course, right here, Ether's starting to look like 90s tech stock as ETFs catch fire. 19 days of inflows. There's been days where it's pacing Bitcoin ETF inflows. What's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of dormant for the whole first year, really, or the first 11 months. And then in July, it just woke up. There was a couple good narratives. I think for a lot of people, it dawned on them that if tokenization is going to take off, a lot of it's going to happen with Ethereum. And so in terms of betting on a blockchain, which is obviously a different type of trade than buying Bitcoin, betting on a blockchain, I think Ethereum became like the one to go to. And I think the price started to rally and it's up 110% in 3 months. So the flows really started after that rally got going. I think people needed to see some like life in Ethereum and they did. And now if you look at the ETF, probably the most amazing stat is that if the Bitcoin ETFs had never launched, right? ETHA would be the fastest ETF to 10 billion in history. The only problem is the Bitcoin ETFs did launch. To me, this is like being Reggie Miller and having to play in the Michael Jordan era. Like you're so good, you probably would have had 5 rings, but Jordan is there. But so I will say that Ether's having a nice run. I don't know if it can keep it up. I think what it did is it got to where we all thought it should be, which is about 13% market share. I think its ceiling is probably 20. But now it's respectable. I think it actually it emerged into where I think a lot of people hyped it up to be, and that's good. We'll see where it goes from here, but impressive July.
ETH is doing so well that I heard a rumor that Yago is no longer going to do Bitcoin OS. He's going to do ETH OS. Is that true?
Well, I mean, the nice thing about Bitcoin OS is that it gives you all of the capabilities of Ethereum on Bitcoin. So the higher Ethereum rises, the more valuable Bitcoin OS is.
That actually makes sense. But what do you make of the Ethereum run here? Eric, I mean, I'm going to ask Yago, but I think it's mostly Tom Lee. I think Ethereum got its own little Michael Saylor to just go pump it on Wall Street, and that's a huge part of this. But Yago, I mean, what do you make of ETH catching up here? Obviously, we've seen this in previous cycles. Maybe it was never going to happen, but seems to be just repeating.
I don't have a huge amount of insight as to where this capital is coming from. It's not clear to me if it's retail or institution. I do think that Tom Lee really nailed the narrative, right? Stable coins are the most important thing happening in crypto outside of Bitcoin. And where are they going to happen? According to Tom, they're going to happen on Ethereum. And so it's a very, very simple idea, attaching Ethereum to the real story here. I think actually in many ways what we're seeing in Ethereum right now is sort of like an echo of the massive interest and the genius act passing for stablecoins. That said, ultimately momentum generates its own narratives. And so I do think that this is going to go beyond just a stablecoin narrative for Ethereum. And I don't think that we should be overly surprised. This is actually the same pattern that we're seeing now. It's the same pattern that we've seen time and time again. Bitcoin first, then Ethereum, and then alts. And it's just taking longer, but is a much, much bigger wall of capital this time.
Yeah, the question is if they'll actually make it to the coins or if they'll just stay in whatever they can get exposure to in the stock market. But I guess that remains to be seen.
It doesn't
Eric,
really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't think it really matters. So even if the funds come in through ETFs or Treasury Companies, and at the end of the day, what they do is they create demand for ETH, they create demand for BTC, and then as a result, everything reprices against it. So even if all of the money, 100% of it, was US investors investing in US firms on NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange, it would still make BTC, ETH, and ultimately every single other asset more valuable and more expensive for people in Korea, China, Thailand. So it's one global bucket of capital.
That makes sense. There's another huge story here, Eric, I want to ask you about. Seemingly nobody but you mentioned it, which I find very strange. There was an article in Bloomberg, but we had sort of quietly the SEC go from 25,000 to 250,000 options per position limit on IBIT. And last I checked, IBIT was already beyond the fact that it was the most successful ETF ever. The options launch also quietly insane success. And now you can go 10x on the size. The biggest criticism was we can't really use this to hedge. We can only do 25,000 contracts. Now you can do 250,000.
Yeah, no, it's big because institutions really like to use options. They're very creative. To me, options are like giving a painter like 10 extra colors to paint with. They can really customize and fine tune what they're doing. You can also do a lot of just rank speculation with options, hedging during volatility. So this is a big deal. I think, when we look at like HYG options, to me, they're almost like the new CDX. ETF options have become very relied on by the biggest investors. So if IBIT options you're able to use more, that's good. They're also allowing flex options, which are like options you can customize. And what that's going to do.
I literally have no idea what that is.
Yeah. Customizable options really allow you to, again, it's almost like pinpoint a targeted outcome. So there's these ETFs called buffers that use flex options. So you're going to have more ETFs that come around and say, okay, we're going to give you Bitcoin, but the first 10% that it goes down, you're going to cover. But beyond that, the options will cover. But on the upside, you only get 40% of the upside. Beyond that, you give up. And they're going to give you like 20 choices. You want 40%, 50%, 30%, and you're going to be able to it's just like going to a plate, like a clothes store and finding like that exact perfect size for you. So that's another offshoot of the options increase, but also symbolically, it just shows there's a new sheriff in town. I thought that there was a couple releases over the past couple days that were, again, showed a much more lenient pro-crypto SEC.
Yeah, I mean, we were worried there for a minute. Yago and I had Matt Hogan on last Thursday, and that was the day that they rejected or indefinitely paused the Crypto 10. And I think people were starting to worry a little bit about the SEC, but it seems like maybe they're just waiting to get their guidance for ETF approvals in general together before they start sweeping, doing individual ones. And we're probably going to get just this major sweep. Well, I mean, once they have that guidance and if you follow these rules, you're approved, right?
Yeah. Did you see the guidance came out yesterday? Pretty much.
There you go.
Yeah. So, and just I don't know if people have caught that, but that was, in fact, almost bigger news than the options. Basically, if the coin has futures connected to it that trade on Coinbase derivatives exchange for 6 months, you can be ETFable. So all the usual suspects are in. There's about 15 coins, I think, that will be approved based on that guidance. So look for September, October, about 10 new coins coming out with ETF packaging in a spot product.
Okay, so I think we can summarize all of this as everything you can do on any asset you're going to be able to eventually do on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and maybe 13 or 14 more of these things, and probably 1 million by next year, knowing how things are going. So maybe we've talked that to death. I want to talk about this White House report. Yago, we have Trump's top guy, crypto guys, US DeFi will thrive, assures Bitcoin reserve is coming. So this was obviously notable. I think the biggest ticket item we were waiting for in that report was hey, how much Bitcoin does the United States government actually hold? We saw that the U.S. Marshals and that Freedom of Information Act only had about 29,000, and people freaked out, right? And they thought we were supposed to have 200,000, but here we are, Bo Hines and Tyler Williams from the Treasury saying that we are still getting a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Hines had a quote that was like, "You're going to love what's coming next," or something. So should we be worried that there's going to be no strategic Bitcoin reserve? It's gone. Is this misdirection? Does this matter?
I think this is being teased and will continue to be teased for a while. Is my assumption. Ultimately, it's probably going to require Congress. It's going to require law for it to have any sticking power. There might be things that come out through executive orders, but if people are expecting to see this become a fundamental pillar of U.S. government policy, then there needs to be law. So I think right now it's more of a tease. Very likely the first thing that will drop is some kind of executive order for actual purchases. They're likely structuring that now to be in line with the last executive order, which described revenue neutral purchases, and then working its way through Congress and the Senate is law.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Eric, do you think we're getting a strategic Bitcoin reserve?
Yeah, looks very promising. The idea that you can't buy any new ones, but you can find some creative ways to maybe acquire some. Great. I think the stockpile was at 180 billion ish, 200 billion.
I mean, we thought that there was about 180,000 to 200,000 coins, but you got to remember that half of those definitely belong to Bitfinex.
Oh, okay. Well, for me, when I think of this strategic reserve, I think of the symbolism of, hey, look, where were you a year ago? Now you've got the White House thinking this is worth holding, and at least they're not dumping it. Because I remember when the ETF came out, IBIT and all those ETFs, and I just remember there was dump after dump, and I think one was from the German government, and they was like, oh, here comes the German dump, and the ETFs and Sailor just ate all the dumps. Thankfully, otherwise, the price would be really in tatters. But the dumps of the governments, at least you're not dumping. So there's one. And number two, I heard, I've just I was at that token 2049, and I heard people talking about how because the U.S. had this, it was getting other countries to look into it. And so there's a lot of, it's just I just wouldn't, I don't know. It's hard for me to be overcritical if it's not exactly the right amount you thought, or because they won't buy new ones. I don't know. To me, it's it's at least a B+, just the fact that they're not dumping it.
And Yago, isn't that the game theory of Bitcoin in the first place? Is regardless of whether it's government, an institution, an individual, as some say, Bitcoin is for enemies. Sort of aligns everybody's self-interest to go after more Bitcoin and secure the network because it's in their own interest, even if it's in the interest of their enemies.
I think look, I don't have huge sort of alpha here. I'm not in Washington D.C., but my sense is that we're already starting to see other governments, other sovereign wealth funds, sometimes explicitly, more frequently, sort of quietly acquiring directly BTC, acquiring mining equipment, buying shares in miners, acquiring ETFs. So there's already significant government, right, which goes far beyond standard institutional acquisition happening, and that is likely to ramp up. The US government actually purchasing BTC, first of all, just saying that it will have a reserve, and then actually purchasing BTC has a much more powerful effect than their direct purchases. What it does is it legitimizes the asset. It legitimizes the asset so that you can now borrow against it. It legitimizes the asset so that corporates can add it to their treasury. It legitimizes the asset so that pension funds can hold it. And that is, I think, the really big story, right? It's the hundreds and hundreds of trillions of dollars of potential capital, which suddenly would be able to begin to acquire and hold BTC, which today because of the inherent conservatism of these types of institutions, and because the entire financial system is sort of a quasi, is deeply embedded with government, especially the banks. Right now is not happening.
Scott, can I ask about this?
Please.
This idea of Bitcoin for enemies, because you had that tweet. You had a couple tweets about how.
No, I didn't. Nobody saw that.
You had some of these OG types who are like, hey, it's almost like the band I really liked sold out and went mainstream, and like they're over now.
That's exactly right.
I think I put that idea into Scott's head.
Did you?
Maybe.
I think so.
Well, that's not what I said, but a lot of people responded. He's talking about the tweet that I said where Bitcoin is great, something about Bitcoin's amazing, but it's obviously been partially co-opted by the very people it was made as a hedge against. And and Yago, this you and I have definitely discussed that a lot of early whales are disillusioned and heading for the exits. That was the gist.
Well, I
don't know about a lot, but there's certainly some.
Enough. Yeah. Go ahead, Eric. What's the question?
Well, what's the logic there? Is the logic that I was going to buy this thing and it was going to be like in these wallets all around in like the private world, like the underground, and that it was going to be something that pissed off the government and like I feel good about that? Or was it, hey, this is a technology and a currency and a store of value that I think will appreciate, and government can't dilute it. And if the government can't dilute it, then it works as a hard money. And that is still intact. Like, even though the government is like buying it, it still can't dilute it or kill it. So I don't get how, is it just the style question? It's like, I don't like the White House.
Here's the guy who gets to answer the question.
I'm going to take my ball.
I've been part of these conversations for the last close to 15 years now. I think I can give good color on this. The sort of wet dream, right? The ultimate fantasy was that there would be a mass of people who would liberate themselves directly by taking custody of their BTC. They would begin to transact in Bitcoin. An entire parallel economy would grow, which would mean that you would never need to touch fiat. It would mean that we would, what the Republicans have been saying that they're going to do, Bitcoin would do. It would starve the beast. Taxes would become impossible to collect. KYC would become irrelevant. People would be able to transact anonymously. That is sort of like absolute, complete victory, unconditional surrender. Governments disappear. Some people, yes. So for some people, that was there's a type of radical out there that I'm sure you've met, Eric, right? For whom anything less than the perfect is not good.
Yeah.
And
you guys are married, right?
And those and it's that level of conviction that was very prevalent in the kind of people who were buying and holding Bitcoin and have held Bitcoin for 15 years, right? You have to have a deep degree of conviction, and sometimes that conviction comes from a level of insanity. And so I think even for me, I always thought that Bitcoin could become the co-opted coin, and that there would be a gateway for everything else to sort of like fill in the gaps of privacy and self-custody. But even so, I'm very happy to see governments looking to add Bitcoin as a true reserve currency, but I feel a little bit dirty about it.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Eric?
Yeah, I think, I grew up I'm a Gen Xer, and it reminds me of bands in the 90s. It's like, oh my God, Nirvana's like doing Rolling Stone. Oh, fuck them. But at the same time, their music still kicks ass. Like, you can't deny it. So I get it. I think this is just what happens when because Bitcoin is the first asset that came from the underground and went mainstream. Mostly things are from the Wall Street area that are democratized to retail. So here you have to look outside of the financial realm for something similar. And I found music and art and stuff like that was similar, where that stuff did get like widely distributed. A lot of businesses made money off of these bands, and it did piss some people off. But at the end of the day, the music still was good, and more people got, like, if something's really good, it's just going to find a way into the mainstream, and I think this is similar. Like Bitcoin is just good. It's very once people start looking into it, I have yet to see a case where someone's like, yeah, screw that. They usually get
like
more
a
and more
meme.
curious.
Eric, it's like a meme where you like cry, but into like a huge stack of cash, like as your tissues. Because like when you're people, my favorite comments to that of all of them, of course, I triggered every maxi on the planet by using the word co-opted, which maybe I shouldn't, but was all of them saying, what are they going to do? Exit into fiat? And I'm like, if you have $10 billion, I don't really think you care deeply about fiat devaluation.
Yeah. That's
oh my
true.
God, inflation's going to inflate
gotcha
away my $10 billion that I just cashed out. Oh, by the way, I still have 140,000 Bitcoin you guys don't know about. Like, Yago, I doubt these people are going entirely for the exit, even though we see these big numbers. Oh, and also we have a vehicle now that they can exit in a tax-efficient way through Treasury Companies and still say that they're in it.
The reason this matters to me is, as somebody who's on the lookout for possible risks, and we've gone over some. I wonder if if the OGs leave and it becomes like this, if it loses that special early DNA, would that be a risk where it just becomes like a Wall Street asset? It's a question I've been.
Yeah, Yago, I want you to answer that too. Udi had a great thread, that basically said, like, this is the most bullish thing is because, eventually the money has to be distributed. It has to change hands. You have to have new believers. Now you have this new passionate floor. Yago, what do you make of that?
I would argue that that having OGs is very important, but what's better than having OGs? It's having China, Russia, Europe, and the US all utilizing the same asset. They will never agree on anything. And ultimately, what protects Bitcoin is that there's consensus about the way it is today and no consensus about any changes that can be made to it. So I think as much as sort of Bitcoin OGs could help ossify this platform and turn it into an extremely reliable system for property rights, the absolute anarchy of having large geopolitical actors who are, mortal enemies, ossifies and protects the system even more.
Eric, does that answer your question?
I'm assuming you're an OG.
He's as OG as they get. Yeah.
Okay. You're like OG, O capital G. Well, then if you're saying
Satoshi Yagamoto.
Yeah. Okay. So, but
bear in mind that my views are not representative. I think I've always been a bit of a weird. Let me put it this way: my views are not representative of the OGs who scream on Twitter, of whom very few remain, and is only partially representative of the people who, potentially are selling out now and have been sort of like the cultural, hardcore of Bitcoin. We're 15, 16 almost years in at this point. There has been consistent attrition. Philosophical schisms, people getting bored, people dying, just standard attrition over the last 16 years anyway. That process is going to continue. And so, there'll be people like me and people like Eric Voorhees and people, like Luke Jr., who probably will always hold a candle to, and promote whatever their original vision of what this could potentially be is. But I think we become less important over time, and I think that's a good thing.
It's interesting, but yeah, thank you.
Then the government is Ticketmaster. That's a funny comment. That's a really funny comment. Going back to the Nirvana thing, but that's just really smart. Brandon Nodnarb 211. You're a smart guy. I don't know, is Nodnarb a last name, or is that like some meme I don't know about from Gen Z? So now we're like running.
Well, wouldn't Coinbase be Ticketmaster, because they're charging people 1.4% just to exchange with Bitcoin? That's like Ticketmaster prices right there.
Yeah, and they're now going to do it with JP Morgan.
I think Coinbase is Ticketmaster in that metaphor. I think the government is like your dad going with you to the Nirvana show.
Your dad blasting it as you pull up to school to embarrass you. Yeah. Because we all know that happens.
Maybe we can sit on Trump's shoulders while we buy our BTC.
The shoulders of giants, I dare say. Yeah, guys, that's all. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. Thank you, Eric, Yago. As usual, man, you guys are a trip. That was a great conversation. Eric, I'm just going to hire you to ask Yago questions so I can leave. So much easier.
Well, you're trying to inspire. You asked the original question, which got me thinking. So
that way, I didn't, I fired that off on like a Friday. And Sunday night, I started getting these Google alerts, and it was like all these stories on CoinDesk and Yahoo Finance. I was like, I wasn't even talking. All the stories were that it was about the 80,000 sale, and it had literally nothing to do with that. I was like, it's just amazing.
Sometimes those tweets that you just don't even think twice about are the ones that hit hard. It's hard. It's dude. Yeah.
Anyway. I think that there's something to be said for the more mindless things you put out into social media, the more likely they are to do well because of the nature of social media.
Sure.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good one. Later. Cheers. All right, guys. Very quickly before I bring on Dan of Z-Chart, guys. We didn't do it yesterday. We're doing it today. We got Aptos, as always, as an incredible sponsor here, usually on Wednesdays, but Thursday. Just to give you some quick milestones, U.S. Aptos milestones soar higher. Recent all-time highs like 5.4 billion monthly DEX volume, 835K app revenue, 1.3 billion in stable coins, 450 million Bitcoin bridge, 530 million in RWAs, 200 million in ecosystem grants. That's the global trading engine in full effect on Aptos. So go and check that out. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Dan from the Chart Guys. What like if you were being announced as like the center on the Milwaukee Bucks or something, like what song would you come out to, do you think?
Oh man. I don't have any all my music wouldn't be the right mood for that.
Yeah, so. But that's what makes it great. You want to come out to something super chill.
I guess the Who Eminence Front.
Okay, well, I mean that's a good one. All right, let's look at your charts. That's a good choice. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so I'm on the 12-hour for Bitcoin. I've been watching this all week, and as I tell people, identify a time frame and something that you're watching, and keep it simple. And so, I'm not going to look at anything until this goes one way or the other. And if it breaks bear, we're going to look at previous resistance to try and hold as support. And if it breaks bull, we're going to test all-time highs. And right now, there again no red flags with the style of this consolidation. And, just to talk about price action yesterday with the FOMC reaction, essentially what happened is, and the NASDAQ was doing the same thing. We're dropping because Powell is saying, not really leaning into any cuts coming anytime soon. And then we V-shape when Meta and Microsoft have earnings after hours and rip 10% into blue sky. And so, Bitcoin's following the NASDAQ in the short term doing that. And then altcoins are following Bitcoin in the short term doing that. And so here we are. We're just watching. Again, in the end, you zoom out, doesn't really matter. But if you're zoomed in, that's what was going on yesterday. But 12-hour, just watch that channel. And this is healthy consolidation at the moment. And we'll see the direction that it breaks. And, a lot of people are recognizing that altcoins have been a lot weaker during this period of consolidation. And ETH is holding on well. So, we're seeing perhaps altcoins bleed into ETH. I've got a key support. We got the daily higher low. We got a new one here. Simple statement. If 36.76 is support, bulls have absolute complete control. If we lose that level, we may be looking for weekly consolidation shaping up. So again, just watching these two little short-term levels here to see, can the bears prove something on these two names? The bears haven't proven anything in weeks at this point. Again, some altcoins have confirmed daily downtrends. Bears have proven something there. But as far as the two major pillars, bears still have proving to do.
I just love that we can talk about ETH in a favorable light after all these years together.
It's been a long time for sure. And still watching ETH BTC. Again, whenever I'm watching the BTC pairing, I want to compare it to the US dollar pairing. And the question is it doing anything different? And the answer is no. So I'm not getting any clues or information. It's when it's doing something different that it stands out to us. So again, just the example I always give is if ETH USD hit the new high here and the BTC pairing did not, that would be a little signal that we're weakening, and that would be something we want to pay attention to. But at this point, if they're doing the same thing, that's just fine. Bulls are all right with that. And again, just watching that little daily high or low. And again, we have to remind ourselves, okay, let's just say bears prove something on ETH. Go to the weekly chart. Weekly consolidation wouldn't be a huge red flag. And again, if I will at that point be watching for the possibility, if that weekly consolidation can stay bull flaggy, it is a cup and handle setup. So again, it wouldn't be a huge red flag to enter weekly consolidation. You would just want to ensure that, ideally maybe 3,200 holds as support to keep that weekly consolidation healthy.
So what else are you looking at?
I've been watching the narrative fade a bit on the Treasury companies in the short term. Again, that can be revived, BMNR. You're going to be hard pressed to find a stock where the closing price was lower than the opening price, something like 14 out of 15 days in a row. And you got, SBET has been in slow bleed mode. DYNX was one of the newer ones, slow bleed. So I'm keeping an eye out for the slow bleed to shift, and maybe there's a second wind. I don't expect the second wind to be anything massive. Just looking at the weekly perspective, I'd just be looking for a weekly lower high. But as far as I'm concerned, I won't say the narrative's dead. I'm saying the narrative is sleeping. It was a nice 1,000. You can't run 1,000% plus in a week and not pull back massively. And so just keeping an eye out for when that shift back. Essentially, we need to find supports. Euphoria, breakout on the headlines, and now we're searching for support, and that support has not been found yet. So keeping an eye out for that in the Treasury companies.
Perfect. Set. You got one more there?
Psychedelic still. So we touched on Psychedelic last week. And again, ATAI is one of the other psychedelic names that has Bitcoin on the Treasury, but just seeing aggressive dip buying. One of the companies that they have ownership in had bad reading come in. We get a big gap down, 25%, and a very significant recovery. So that's exactly what bulls want to see, buying of the dip. And so again, I'm going to be keeping a close eye on the psychedelic names all year from here, especially it's great when they got the combo of some crypto involved as well. But again, just as high risk, high reward as you can get in markets, pretty much would be quantum stocks, which already had their massive run earlier this year, and psychedelic stocks. And so I love when low cap names get hype and euphoria. And so we still don't have the herd, with headlines getting all their attention. And I'm keeping an eye out for that later this year.
I thought you were going to say altcoin 97 treasury stocks are going to be the most volatile.
They're definitely volatile in the short term. The thing is, I have a little bit more, again, I'm 10% fundamental, 90% technical. I have some fundamental belief in the psychedelic space, long-term treasury companies. I'm still not sold on that model.
Yeah, for some of them I am, and for 97% of them I am definitely not. Guys, give Chart Guys a follow. I'm going to be on Sirius as usual right after the show on Thursday, so check me out there. And once again, check out Dan's YouTube as well, man. Thank you so much, as always, for sharing your time with us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm going to be gone the next couple of weeks, taking a road trip out to Washington, renting a camper van, doing a big loop, but I'll be back second half of August.
Whatever, man. Have fun. Have a great trip. Have a great trip. We'll see you soon, man. We'll miss you. Thanks.
Peace.